For this next panel, when we were putting together the agenda and thinking about some of the topics we want to explore, one of the things we always want to do is looking ahead to the future. And, of course, as you can see, age of next, what's next? And one of the things that I always look to think about where trends are going is looking to see where investors are investing, because investors have a long time horizon. They have to think at least 10 years out, for the life of their fund, and usually it goes beyond that. And what are the areas they're investing in? What are some of the themes and trends that they are looking at? And so we always kind of tell the corporate partners we work with to look closely at that, and we wanted to share that with our group. And so when I was introduced to Amulya, I was like, oh, this is great, because she brings multiple perspectives that we don't always get here in Pittsburgh, or I always want to make sure we are adding to it, in addition to her corporate background that she'll talk about, but also from the Bay Area and investing in physical AI. So really kind of a triple crown there. So with that, I want to introduce Amulya Vishwanath, who's the co-founder and general partner of Teachable VC, a VC firm based in San Francisco. Really welcome to Pittsburgh, your first time here. And maybe just to get started, if you could tell the audience a little bit more about your background, and then also about Teachable and your areas of investment focus.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's so great to be here. It is my pleasure to be in one of the pioneering cities in robotics specifically. I am Amulya Vishwanath. Very recently, I left NVIDIA. I know, do not ask me why, what, and whatnot. I was there for about 7 years, and I decided that it was time to dabble on the investing side. For the longest time, I have supported startups in a very informal way as a DevRel leader while at NVIDIA, and I decided that it was time to get more serious in terms of how I show up for startups. So about 6 months ago, I met a couple of founders, and I decided it's time. It's time for me to get into investing full time. And I started refining my investment thesis, and I noticed that even before the terminology physical AI came together, I was NVIDIA's first physical AI product marketer, starting from 2018. And let me clarify why. Because NVIDIA has been trying to position their robotics offering on GPUs and on the software side for a really long time. And one of the first products that they built was Isaac SDK. And I was the first product marketer for Isaac SDK. And you will no longer hear Isaac SDK. Maybe you will eventually. But that said, there's so much that has happened, and so much of the early positioning journey that I got to be a part of, especially learning directly from Jensen and the key C-suite leaders at NVIDIA, that I think it's been a very enriching experience for me the last 7 years. And prior to that, I have to say that I'm an engineer who has done triple pivots in the last 14 years. I started out as a hardware engineer and then pivoted into product side, and now on the investing side. So it's an interesting journey. So, come talk to me if you're ever curious about it. But that said, now that I look back, it all makes sense for me. Starting out, understanding the semiconductor domain, then building on top of it with the software experience that I gained heavily at NVIDIA, and also across different verticals and domain knowledge, right? Especially robotics and even video analytics. Seeing the first version of pre-trained models that came together while at NVIDIA to now where we are talking about building a robot brain using Project Groot's technology that NVIDIA is building, for instance. So a lot has happened, and it just makes the most sense to be investing in this space because we are still just getting started. And there's so much happening in the physical AI space, as you all can already notice. And so Teachable VC is an early stage VC firm based out of San Mateo or San Francisco, California. And we are a bunch of serial entrepreneurs and operators who have been in this domain, helped companies, helped corporations and startups, scale their business, scale their product adoption. And now we are writing checks actively We have invested in companies that are focused on developer products, but at the same time, one interesting company is working on communication protocols for heterogeneous robots. So lots happening in this space. We're just getting started, and physical AI is the next era where investing and building is happening heavily right now.
That's great. It's a great overview. Maybe if you could go a little bit, further into talking about your investment thesis in physical AI, and kind of what that means in terms of what you look for. And I know you, while you're in town, you've also had a chance to meet with some startup companies here. So just give us some insight into how you're looking at them. Yeah.
So I was working full time at NVIDIA, but also doing my executive MBA from UC Berkeley. So I was also in school the last 2 years. And one of the courses that I took was VC in tech. And I was like, let me see if I'm really serious about it. So I started putting together an investment thesis based on my observations of how I was seeing startups were coming together. And at the same time, the type of products that were being put together by our ecosystem, and also, within NVIDIA. And I realized that there's so much that's happening on the virtual or digital AI side, but also there's so much happening on the core robotics side as well. I'm just taking one slice of the story and sharing, right? But then imagine that, there is a beautiful intersection between everything digital AI and physical AI, or specifically robotics. And that is how I started designing my investment thesis, because a lot of virtual agents are being built out today. A lot of hardcore robotics has been heavily focused on the mechanical aspects, right? But that said, there's so much of AI that's yet to come into the physical world. So that is exactly the intersection that our investment thesis is focused on. So anything from communication protocols across heterogeneous robots to how the next developer experience is going to look like on top of ROS, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with. I think there's so much, and it's just the start of it. And I do not want to just emphasize on foundation models, because I think, we've been talking about it for a while. A lot of companies like Covariant, for instance, which is now a part of Amazon Robotics, have been building robot brains and so on. But that said, there's so much more happening. And this is, I think, a great time to be a part of physical AI era. And the investment thesis is going to continue to evolve. And that is because you have to follow the founders and how they see it. And there's a beautiful intersection of how physics, robotics, and AI will be coming together. And that's our investment thesis.
Okay. That's great. And sort of follow the founders. I think that's a kind of a great way to think about it. And I know you've been meeting with a lot of founders, before your fund, during. I don't know, any insights you're getting from them, anything you're noticing from talking with them? What are the things that they're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. The first thing is that founders have a lot going on. I think it's important to empathize with them. I know I come from the investing world. Mm-hmm. I know there are a lot of expectations from investors to our founders, a lot of expectations from corporations to these very founders. But the most important thing is that they are probably a one-person team to begin with, maybe 2, 3, maybe 7, right? Especially when they're engaging at the LOI levels and pilots and whatnot. But that said, I think if there is a beautiful way for corporations to reduce their testing cycles for startups, I think the corporations can also benefit from accelerating their own offerings and integrating how they could work together with startups. And let me get to the founders specifically, right? They literally are the CEO, but also the marketer, also the product manager and whatnot. And I see that with my
engineer.
Exactly. Yeah. And they are trying to, put off fires every single hour. But at the same time, it's, again, this is a very interesting intersection because you cannot have one dominant expertise to focus on. Mm-hmm. Robotics, especially, now with the inclusion of AI, more and more of it, you are not focused on hiring talent just on the robotic side. You're focused on hiring something that's more at the intersection of interdisciplinary skills as well. So for instance, one of my CEOs, he's a core roboticist, and he's like, I need to talk to a VLA engineer. Can you introduce me to a VLA engineer? Guess what? I have a network of VLA engineers. I can introduce you to them because of all the work that I did previously at NVIDIA. So I think the way investors are also looking at the difference between dumb capital and smart capital is becoming more and more prominent. They don't just need the checks. They need you to help them with their day-to-day, and talent is going to be a really big war as well, especially in the US, and especially with companies that give you a really large paycheck versus deciding to work for, up-and-coming startup, which, may pay very well, but we have seen from some of the recent startup mix-ups that sometimes it goes south. So lots happening, but I think founders are in the middle of it, and I think we should be more empathetic to them, and talent is going to be the moat for a lot of these founding teams.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, maybe if we stay with founders for a minute and also even expand it, like as they think about physical AI, so as founders are building physical AI companies, or investors are looking to invest in it, or corporations are also thinking about their strategy, are there misconceptions about physical AI or new ways of thinking about it that you would suggest that say, okay, sort of untrain your mind from the digital realm, and you have to think about it this way?
Yeah, I think I would start with the first thing. For instance, you've seen a lot of news articles about Lovable hit this milestone with X millions of dollars of revenue already coming in. That is not going to happen in this space right away. I think it's something super important for corporations, even if you're running a CVC, or if you're an institutional investor, or even if you're a founder trying to hold yourself accountable in an extreme way. The same set of metrics do not apply as it used to for SaaS side. That's one of the things. And then the second thing is that founders, this is hilarious because I'm working with a bunch of them on fundraising, and they take it super light because they assume that only when they're ready to fundraise is when they'll start those conversations with investors. But no, that's not how it works. You have to start the conversation at least 6 months in advance with corporations, with the CVC entities, with institutional investors, in order for them to at least get to a decision at some point. So I do believe that founders should be very specific about their timelines and be very open to engaging with investors very early on, which a lot of them tend to take it for granted, and that's not the case. And, as just a practitioner or an operator in this space, we think that a lot of these things have been solved because robotics, for instance, and, again, the reason why I'm trying to generalize it to robotics is that we think everything has been solved. It's already saturated, but no, there's going to be so much that's going to happen because let me take an example of the ROS ecosystem. It's been there for a really long time. It's been fantastic, but is the developer experience fantastic? It's not. So there are a lot of companies now trying to reset how that ecosystem is going to look like. So with that said, there's so much that's going to happen, but we assume from outside, as in that everything has been already solved. And, why are people rushing to solve things at the intersection of AI, robotics, and physics, for instance? But we are just getting started.
Just getting started. One thing we were just talking about before we came on stage was you spent last week really in San Francisco with their robo business, really absorbing that ecosystem. You're spending this week in Pittsburgh. You've also have observations, I think, from your time in Boston. Just any observations you want to share, that similarities and differences you've seen, across the ecosystems?
Definitely. So Teachable VC is focused on US startups, and we fund anywhere from the early discovery checks, which is pretty much as small as $50K, even before the founder has incorporated their company, to all the way to about $1 million. And one of the things that we've noticed in terms of the trends we're seeing locally, California is heavily focused on software. We do see a few of them focused on hardware, like general purpose robots being built in Palo Alto garages. But that said, if you talk to every other Gen Z kid in the Bay Area, they'll be like, I'm building the cursor for robotics. And I've seen way too many pictures on that side. And Boston, my read is that it's been more application specific. And I would also include Austin to some sense in that category. And Pittsburgh, my understanding and, in the discussions that I've had even last night is that a lot of the nuts and bolts are being built out right here in Pittsburgh. So I think there is a very good collective strength within the US that we're just getting started again. But that said, California is leaning more towards software-first approach. And I think there's more scope to integrate all of these three ecosystems together to make the most for this US economy.
Okay, Nick, great. We wanted to leave about 5 minutes for questions from the audience. So if there's one right back there, so.
Hi, thank you. So since you have a background in marketing, I'm very curious about this. So I'm wondering, when you're looking at investment opportunities, how does marketing or their adoption of marketing or their thoughts on how to use marketing factor into your investment approach, your investment thesis? And when I say marketing, I'm really thinking about it very broadly, not just the promotion P, but all four of the Ps, including product development, and then also building a brand and building a brand story. So at what stage do you think it's appropriate for these companies to start doing marketing, and how does it play into the way you approach it?
Yeah, definitely. I think on the physical AI side, there's a lot more tech involved before anything go to market and specifically marketing outbound activations happen. But that said, typically the way Teachable VC is set up is that between me and my co-founder, we tend to be the first go-to-market hire for our founders. So we help them until and unless they're ready to bring someone full-time focused on that. But at pre-seed to seed stage, I believe that they're more so focused on bringing those first initial customers onboarding them, and then, helping them out with specifics. I'm even helping them write testimonials for their customers, right? I'm doing that today. But that said, I think as they hit between anywhere seed plus to Series A, I think that's a great time to bring in a dedicated resource that's focused on go-to-market. And specifically, I do believe that physical AI companies should emphasize more on product marketers than outbound or digital social media marketing managers and so on. Because what happens is that when you bring in a technical product marketer, and that was one of my former roles as well, is that they're able to understand, where the company is headed. They're able to understand the features, the product, and turn them into insights for customers and also drive adoption externally. So that's been the trend so far, but you'll never know, maybe 7 years down the lane, you might need a go-to-market agent, AI agent very soon. Yeah.
I think it's you, Jeff.
Okay. I hear you.
Oh, I can't hear me. So I was actually involved in a fascinating discussion yesterday with Westinghouse, and they asked me a question I couldn't figure out the answer to. It basically was, we have a bunch of blue-collar workers that build nuclear reactors. How is AI going to help us? And they're not thinking of it in terms of automating via robots, but like the potentially smart tooling that might emerge to help blue-collar work. I'm just curious what you're starting to see in that space, if you have a strong move in that space.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the companies that we've invested in, they're at Series A, and they'll be announcing their investment news pretty soon. Their goal is to simplify machine tending, for instance. The technicians have a hard time to reprogram these pre-programmed robots, right? And they've built a very simple interface, and they're working with the ABBs of the world, and they've tried to simplify it. So has it achieved all of the capabilities? Nope. Is it a good start? I think it's a great start. So that said, I think there's a lot happening in this space already, especially industrial robotics, and where there is either gap in labor or, like gap in knowledge, for instance. And the second thing I would add is that there was another company yesterday, I forget the name, but then they have the metal grinding solution, right? I don't know if they're in the
I think
room,
it was
but
Instinct for Robotics, right?
yes, instinct robotics. Yeah. So, they are solving for, a lot of the challenges with blue collar labor. So either it's because there's less of them or there's so much effort involved that might be a OSHA hazard, for instance. So it's going to take a while, but I can already see a couple of startups focused on AI welding, for instance. It's going to take a while, but we're on the way. Yeah.
All right. Well, Amulya, thank you so much for joining us this week, and again, hope you enjoyed the rest of your week in Pittsburgh. And let's give her a great hand.
Thanks, everyone.